know about the Biblio Lifestyle weekly newsletter? Readers really like it, and I think you will too. It's filled with reading and lifestyle tips, curated book list, recipes, roundups of what's new, and other fun things I think you'll enjoy. Subscribers receive an email every Friday, and it's free. So sign up at bibliolifestyle.com. Now on to the episode. I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Cassandra Khaw to talk about their latest novel, The Salt Grows Heavy. The Salt Grows Heavy is a sinister Little Mermaid retelling that's set in a dark world where we meet the mermaid currently on the run with a plague doctor into the snowy forest. But what they discover there is equally as terrifying and just as sinister. Now, in this episode, Cassandra and I talk about so many things, from the themes of mortality, immortality, and facing our fears, to a fun game where Cassandra reimagines classic fairy tale stories we've grown up with as more dark horror stories. Cassandra also talks about their previous book, Nothing But Blackened Teeth, their upcoming books, future projects, favorite books, and lots more. So, let's get into the episode, because I can't wait for you to listen to my chat with author Cassandra Khaw, because it will make you rethink those classic fairy tales you thought you knew. So stay tuned. Where were you the last weekend of April 2023? Well, I don't know about you, but hundreds of readers and myself had a fantastic 3 days at the Spring Summer Epigraph Literary Festival. It was really a great time. Oh my gosh. Authors were sharing about their new books. I was laughing so hard during the happy hours, and I learned so many new things at our lifestyle-themed sessions. So, if you missed the festival, or you want to relive the highlights, visit epigraphLitFest.com and select replays. That's epigraphLitFest.com and select replays. Your TBR will explode, you'll learn a thing or two, and you'll have lots of laughs, especially at those happy hour sessions. So go to epigraphLitFest.com and select replays. Hi readers, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and here on the couch with me is an award-winning game writer and scriptwriter, but they're here on the couch with me to talk about their latest novel, The Salt Grows Heavy. Please welcome to the couch, Cassandra Khaw. Hi, Cassandra.
Hi, so happy to be here. It's a very comfy couch.
Yay, I love it. So happy to have you here. I'm really excited to talk about The Salt Grows Heavy. But before we get into, the whole details of the book and everything, how are you feeling? How excited are you about this book?
Oh, incredibly excited. Last week I had my first book tour ever, and it blew my mind that so many people actually turned up. People have read the book. There are people who have finished the book on the day of publication itself, and it's kind of wow. We're already moving into the second week, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next.
Yay, I'm so excited. And I can just imagine folks were excited anyway, because I'm thrilled to have you on, because the first book I read by you was Nothing But Blackened Teeth. And my God, it was just so engrossing, so good. So now that this book is available and you're available, I'm happy to chat with you. So yes, this is a treat for me indeed as well. But I want readers to hear it straight from you. Tell us about your novel, The Salt Grows Heavy, and what can readers expect when they pick up your book?
Every time I try to do the elevator pitch for the book, it always ends up sounding like I'm trying to deliver a punchline. But essentially, what happens when a carnivorous mermaid and a mysterious plague doctor go into the woods and find a cult of immortal children and tree surgeons who call themselves the Saints? It's a retelling of Tree of Grimm's fairy tales, I think.
And I love a good fairy tale retelling. I was actually even thinking about Little Mermaid and just how sweet mermaids are made to be. But in this book, it's quite the opposite. I mean, they have sharp teeth, they're eating everything, and then the village is kind of demolished. Tell us about it.
With mermaids, I've always found it incredibly fascinating because, like you said, they've very frequently been Disneyfied. They're very cute. They're very child friendly for the most part. But if you look at the original folklore and like dig into the themes behind it, it is essentially a woman giving up the entirety of her identity, her literal voice, to go after a happy ending. Now, most of the time, we assume the happy ending is exactly what she wants, but if you look at it in slightly different ways, even Disney's Ariel, for example, she's surrounded by human artifacts. She has a fascination with it. It's unique, it's foreign, and I've always wondered, is that desire for land, is that desire for the human prince truly something good for her or something she, well, was almost socialized to experience? And with The Salt Grows Heavy, I wanted to dig deeper into that, into the idea that this was a mermaid who not only was removed from the ocean unwillingly, but was trapped there and drowned, if you excuse the pun, in all the trappings of a happy ending, even though what she really is underneath is a monster.
Absolutely. And I love this twist. And on land, our mermaid meets a plague doctor. Tell us about this doctor.
The plague doctor first showed up in the short story that catalyzed the whole novella, in fact. And the plague doctor, they served as the mermaid's midwife. Now, we find out a little bit more about their past in the book, but for the most part, they are a manufactured creature born of enormous amounts of trauma, and they're still trying to figure out who they are and what they can be outside of the abuse that they suffered. Because I think that's something a lot of people have gone through traumatic past suffer as well. In many ways, our abuse, our scars shape who we are. They define us in terms of how we flinch in the world and how we growl back at the world. And moving past that and healing from it, it's a journey.
Absolutely. Now, in The Salt Grows Heavy, we see these two very different, very unlikely, I guess, yeah, they're travel companions essentially. And on their travels through this snowy forest, they encounter a village of children, but they're all mutilated. And it's kind of like a cult in a weird way, because that's how I received it. These three doctors, surgeons who call themselves the saints, as you said prior, it kind of feels cultish. So, it has a horror element, obviously. There is stories of, the body and immortality and just all these different things. But I'm really curious about the concept for these three doctors, the saints. Tell us about them.
The three saints were actually inspired by an old Grimm's fairy tale, the three army surgeons, and they were a bunch of weird liars, almost. And again, I wanted to take things to a natural conclusion and naturally very dark conclusion because horror is my shtick. And I kind of want to explore a little bit the idea almost that modern society doesn't really have a place anymore for conversations about mortality and death. Especially in the West, it's kind of almost swept under a rug. We are told constantly by social media, by influencers, if we do X, Y, and Z, we could, they imply, enjoy a certain kind of immortality. And in doing so, in divorcing ourselves from the idea of our own deaths, we shrink ourselves, at least in my opinion. There is so much power in understanding that we are finite, that there are only so many number of years. We have to chase down the things that matter to us. And I've always found, at least personally, the knowledge of that as the most propulsive thing in the world. Knowing that I am going to die one day makes everything else a lot less terrifying. I know I will never have those same chances again, so why not pursue them? The worst that'll happen is I fail. And I kind of wanted to capture the reverse of that fear of acknowledging immortality in both the surgeons and the cult that grew around it.
So, going kind of left, but not really, but why do you think, as individuals, human beings, especially folks living in the Western world, why do we approach, or why do we avoid death? And instead of revering it, it's almost like fearing it and doing everything we can to avoid it.
I am not a scholar on any of these topics. I'm sure smarter people have smarter things to say about it. But I suspect it's partially in part, and it sounds horrible, but capitalism, as these things often go, it is beneficial, I think, to big companies to market the idea of lengthening youth, of pushing aging to tomorrow's problem. It is useful for them and profitable for them to prey on our fear of that and to encourage it to the point we can't think of anything else. And I think some of it comes from a more wholesome perspective. But this was something that occurred years ago. I imagine after the World Wars and the focus of regrowing the economy, no one wanted to talk about death anymore. And it was completely understandable back then. All anyone wanted was to regrow, to build, to see a future. And I think after a few years of that, companies kind of took advantage of it, and it just kind of went on from there, which is a really depressing thing to think about at like 10 a.m. in the morning.
No, it kind of is. And, I often say I don't want to prolong youth. I don't want to be a teenager again. I don't want to be in my 20s again. I learned so much from my 30s. Like, I am happy progressing forward. And I don't want time to stop, to freeze. So it's just always just, again, your book is a horror, but I can't help but draw parallels to real life and probing questions of why are we constantly avoiding death, and why is it so bad or wrong to age, and why aren't we receiving it gracefully, just as, okay, yep, we've done our time, we've lived our life, and it has a natural conclusion. So I always welcome any conversation around that.
I'm glad.
So I'm curious though, Cassandra, tell us about your inspiration for The Salt Grows Heavy. What made you decide to pull all these different fairy tales together and give us this story?
Well, it started in 2016 when I wrote the original short story, and in Our Daughters, We Find a Voice. When it first began, it was me wanting to explore a darker retelling of The Little Mermaid. And also because I was on 9gag this once, and I saw a college humor comic strip of all things that said, "What if Ariel laid eggs?" And I distinctly remember that panel. It was just Ariel in the bathtub staring sheepishly at Eric, who just had the most grossed out face because she was just spawning eggs everywhere. And I was like, "Oh, that is so funny and charming. Let's make it terrible." And the short story was born, and it ended with the mermaid standing at a window, holding it open, and allowing her spawn to pour out into the unsuspecting kingdom. Normally, that's where most of my short stories end, but the last few years have had me grappling a lot with the idea of generational sacrifice. I was raised in a traditionally Asian family. My parents, their grandparents were immigrants. And I grew up with being told that everything I am is the result of sacrifice, of generations of women and men giving up everything, every bit of their lives in the hope of providing a better future for their descendants. And now I strongly believe in that kind of community building, in thinking of future generations. But it killed me to think how many of my foremothers had not lived their lives because they were so focused on that they poured all of their hopes and all of their dreams into their children instead. And when I had the mermaid there holding the window open, it struck me I couldn't let her story end there, because I think very often mothers are told that's where the story ends with their children. That is all you are. You're just supposed to be a mother. And I couldn't deal with that. So The Salt Hope Grows Heavy came out of me wanting to allow the mermaid her own personal tale, and to have her find the ending that she wanted rather than the happy ending that was forced onto her. The inclusion of the two grim fairy tales that were mixed into the book, some children play at slaughter and the three army surgeons, those were tossed in as a personal challenge because I want to see if I could get the darkest fairy tales I could find mixed into this one and make it into a good coherent piece. And I think it worked.
I think it worked too. I think The Salt Grows Heavy is an absolute winner. I hope more readers will pick up a copy this summer. I mean, I hope you're reading it later in the year too, if you're looking for a darker read. But no, I think you did a great job with this one. And for that reason, it inspired this game I want to play. You want to hear about it?
Oh, yes. I always like games.
Okay, so I'm calling this one Classic Fairy Tales Retold Horror Edition. All right, so I'm going to list a pairs of classic fairy tales, and you're going to select one of the two that you would like to retell as a horror and why. And if you happen to have any thoughts about how you'd put your spin on it, we welcome that. So are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yay! All right, so what fairy tale would you like to retell as a horror? Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast?
Cinderella.
Okay, why are we going for this one?
I'm thinking of one of the original versions of the story where the stepsisters cut off their toes and cut off their heels to fit into the glass slipper. And extrapolating from there, I kind of want to see a retelling where it's just played straight for a while. And there's this prince who's trying to figure out who fits that one slipper. Except instead of being his queen, he is looking for a sacrifice or a dark god. And after Cinderella gets to his palace, that's when the horror hits and everything becomes clear. And it becomes a fight to the finish for her to get the heck out of there before she is dragged off to be fed to an eldritch thing.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm here for that. Oh my gosh. All right. Are you going to retell Little Red Riding Hood or Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs?
Ooh. Little Red Riding Hood, definitely. I've always loved that fairy tale. I think for my retelling, just off the top of my head, the wolf has always been there with Little Red Riding Hood. In fact, I will go as far as to say that she was born with it growling and growing inside her. And that is the reason she finds herself in the woods very often.
Ooh, okay, no, that makes sense. I like where that is going. No, I like that. And it's something that evolves. And as she gets older and older, you know, she can't avoid it and she just keeps going in the forest. Okay, I'm with it. I'm with it. All right. Are we retelling Hansel and Gretel or Goldilocks and the Three Bears?
Oh, that one's a tough one. I think Hansel and Gretel is going to be way too easy because it is essentially a horror story to begin with.
True.
I think I would retell Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Except instead of her going to their house, she keeps waking up somewhere she does not recognize. And when she isn't waking up somewhere she doesn't recognize, she's waking up with weird little signs that something else has been inside her own home.
Ooh, I can see that.
Eventually, the bear showed up and all the bad things happened. But before that, we get a lot of creepiness.
We get a lot of, yeah. Very eerie. I like that. Okay, Jack and the Beanstalk or Puss in Boots?
Puss in Boots. There's a lot you can do with 9 lives. It would probably, I think, be something like the most recent Puss in Boots movie, but with a whole lot more carnage.
Oh yeah, I'm here for the carnage. All right, I have 2 more. Rapunzel or Sleeping Beauty?
Rapunzel. Except it is a race against time because that is not hair that is growing on her.
Ooh.
And that is a thing that is trying to tendril inside her and puppet her skin for its own devices. So they gotta figure out how to get it off and to stop it from growing further through her skull.
Now that I can see happening. Not hair, something way more sinister. All right. The last one is, and these are kind of darkish, I guess, the Snow Queen or Rumpelstiltskin.
Oh, I love those two. Oh no, I can't decide.
Okay, what would you do with each? Because I love both of those as well, and they're kind of dark too.
The Snow Queen, except if y'all play video games, I would take an approach kind of similar to the first BioShock game and kind of put that, I think, in a 1930s setting, maybe 1920s, something with a lot of glitz and glamour, but a lot of very specific wording and phrases that may cause problems for two protagonists.
Okay. And what would you do with Rumpelstiltskin? I remember I couldn't stop reading that when I was younger. I don't know what that says about me.
I love the Rumpelstiltskin story so much. I think my retelling of it would be something set in in modern times, even like right now, the year 2000 something, and would probably reframe it as bargains that an immigrant mother might try to make in order to save her own kids.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that backfiring.
Ooh, see, I would like that. I would love an immigrant narrative for Rumpelstiltskin. Yeah, I can see that and make it modern day, for sure. I love that. Yay! Well, thank you so much for playing our game.
That was fun.
I know you had to pull a lot of ideas right there on the spot, but I appreciate it. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that my first book from you was Nothing But Blackened Teeth. Just in case there's some listeners here who are not familiar with that book, could you share it with us?
Nothing But Blackened Teeth is the story of childhood friends who really should have stopped being friends some time ago, going to a destination wedding somewhere in the remote parts of Japan, and realizing that bad things happen when people who don't like each other are put in a place where they can do anything they want.
And it gets really dark. Classic haunted house story. There are different explorations. I kind of remember, there's some grief, there are bad relationships. I agree, they should not have been friends. But I was here for it. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
My elevator pitch is it's a good creepy, like a haunted house story. And of course, there was Japanese folklore, their twist. I really enjoyed it. Just a great gothic, eerie fantasy. Aww. It was great. So yeah, that one really turned me on. And when I saw The Salt Grows Heavy, I was like, okay, let's see where this one is going. And then of course you came with the classic fairy tales, turning them into horrors, and I was just here for it. So I hope, readers, you'll check out these two books.
I hope so too, for very obvious reasons.
Yes. But on that note, are you working on any other writing projects now? What can you tell us?
I am putting the finishing touches on an outline for a tie-in book that I can't talk about, but it's a large property and I'm very excited about it. And I'm also working on a dark academia book. Well, it is like dark academia meets battle royale. Mm-hmm. With a very, very unsettling magical school. It is going to be the plottiest, most brain twisty book I've ever written, and I hope it works because it hurts my brain, and I hope this will result in something. Goodness.
Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I have full confidence and I can't wait to see it. So that's just really exciting that we have great books to look forward to. But looking back, Cassandra, looking back at your writing journey thus far, but if you could tell your younger writing self anything, seeing where you are now and looking back, what would you tell them?
That you weren't as insane as everyone said you were to want to pursue a career in writing. I'm actually a trained computer engineer and English is my third language. So I didn't even start writing fiction until I was in my 30s, but I did get into journalism in my mid-20s. And when I brought that up to friends and family, they stared at me like I lost my mind. Several of them made it very clear that they thought I lost my mind, pointing out that I didn't have an MFA, that I wasn't raised in the right countries for this to work. But I am very famously too stupid to not do the things I want to do and toddled after it like an ox. And it worked. And the only thing I'll tell my younger self is keep at it. Trust in yourself, not in what other people say.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that could be applicable to many things, for sure. But even though we're here to talk about The Salt Grows Heavy, I want to know about your reading life. We want to know what you're reading. So tell us about the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
Oh, God, there are so many that I've just been in love with recently. Nat Cassidy's Nestlings is the book I cannot stop talking about. It is about a young New York couple who win the housing lottery and they end up in this absolutely gorgeous apartment complex. Now, weird stuff happens there, obviously, but what I love about the book is the female protagonist is she's a new mother, but the birth resulted in severe complications. There was damage to her spinal column, and she ended up disabled as a result of it. So she's wrestling with postpartum depression. She's wrestling with the fact she used to be a personal trainer, someone who was extremely confident in her body, but is now so limited. She needs to use crutches. She needs to use a wheelchair, and she's struggling with that. And so much of the book just beautifully and tenderly explores what it's like to love something with your entire heart and soul, but still be capable of feeling resentment towards it and the complexity of knowing you're resenting a child of yours. And it also digs into a very unfortunate fact. According to multiple studies, men are more likely to leave women who are diagnosed with a terminal illness. And the book touches on that as well, on how the spouse slowly loses interest in his wife and in the care of her. And it's really complex and just beautifully done, in my opinion. So Ned Cassidy's Nestlings, definitely. And on the nonfiction front, I've been reading Kathy Callagher's The Ugly History of Beautiful Things. Callagher is a fantastic writer. Her prose is just beautiful and leanly poetic. And in this essay collection, she digs into how, as the title implies, the creation of things like mirrors and silk and everything else can have horrifying histories. For example, I didn't know that early mirror makers were essentially poisoned constantly by the mirrors and the mercury they were using to create it, and the kind of rumors and gossip that came up as a result of it. It's great. It is incredibly sobering and demands a lot of introspection when you're done with each essay, but I completely recommend those two.
Wow, sounds like really great reads. What would you say was your favorite childhood book?
That one's easy. The Reprimand by Terry Pratchett. I think it informed a lot of my understanding of the world, of mortality, and what it means to have a good death, and what it means to live a full life. The value of being compassionate towards others and being tender towards the fact we're all going to die one day.
Absolutely. And what books are you looking forward to reading in the year ahead?
The Saint of Bright Doors, I was actually supposed to blurb the book, but I had immigration chaos in the early part of the year. And it is this really, really intricate, gorgeously written science fiction, fantasy, South Asian inspired novel. And it has so many elements going in it. There are just entire cultures and traditions to work through and study and savor. And there is even a therapy group for chosen ones who washed out of their respective destinies and now must figure out how to live. They've kind of failed at their purposes in life. It's really good. And I'm so eager to actually sit down and finish this one.
Yay! All right, so we also love indie bookstores on this podcast. So share with our listeners a favorite local bookstore to you or just a bookstore from your travels.
I loved the book club bar when I first moved to New York last year. It was literally my neighborhood bar because it was like a street away. And I love the concept of it. There are just people wandering around, drinking wine while they go through books. They hold great little events. They're wonderful. But also shout out to Gibson's Bookstore in Concord, which is a small little town, but they have so many events up there, and the shelf talkers are always a delight. When I went there for the tour last week, they had a whole shelf that was titled "Does this have dragons?" And they set up the displays, and all the little quotes there were just perfect. Yes, Yes, it does have dragons. Yes, we chat. Yes, ×3. And it was so charming. I love Gibson so much, and all the people who work there are wonderful. I could definitely go on. The indie bookstores are half my heart. Well, Summer too.
Love it, love it, love it. Absolutely. They're great institutions. All right. So getting back to The Salt Grows Heavy, I know you've done your job, you've written the book, you've given it to us, but what are you hoping readers might feel or take away after they've turned the last page?
Hopefully some kind of closure. I think it's the first book I've written that has like a proper happy-ish ending, ? And I hope it makes people happy. I'm so used to writing dark, terrible things. I never know how to respond to this kind of questions.
Well, I think it was incredibly satisfying. There's a bit of a cliffhanger. It has a happy ending-ish. But I can tell you this, though, the language was just beautiful. It's just lush. It's captivating. And if you're interested in a book that's going to turn those fairy tales on their heads and give you a gothic horror twist, then I would definitely say this is the book for you. The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. Cassandra, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I'm so happy to have been here.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.